Hey y'all, welcome to Absolutely Quilting. My name is Stacy Lute, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I made these portable design boards. So these are very similar to our design wall, in which we typically use for maybe our final layout of the quilt, but these are just miniature versions of a design wall. So what might you use these for? Say you just cut out a block, or you cut down a bunch of half square triangles, you have everything laid out how you want it to look. How are you going to transport that from your cutting table to your sewing machine? That's when these come in very handy. Or say you're in the middle of a project and you got to put it away for whatever reason. Maybe it's getting a timeout, or maybe you just can't get to it right now. You can store those on these boards and everything is right where you left it. So I pulled a couple scraps from some of my scrap bins just so you can see how they work. They are going to hold your fabrics on exactly like your design wall does. And I used batting for my design boards. So they're going to stay right there, right where you need them to. Now, to give you a little example, I am currently working on an orange peel quilt. So I pulled a couple blocks off of my design wall and put them on here. So let's say I'm ready to start piecing this quilt together, and I want to pull the blocks down and make sure I put them together in the correct order. I can pull them directly from my design wall to my mini design boards, take these to my sewing machine, and we are ready to go. Now, I cannot take credit for these cute little things. I actually first saw these on a video that Pat Sloan was using. If you're not already following Pat Sloan, please be sure to give her a like and check her out. I will link her information in the comments below. But I saw Pat Sloan using these and I said, those are brilliant. I need one. While I'm not new to quilting, I am kind of new to all the cool gadgets and gizmos that everybody's using these days. So upon doing a little research, I realized these were originally designed by Lori Holt, and I will also link her original tutorial in the comments below. Lori came up with this concept and did a tutorial on them, and I just had to have them. I thought these were a fantastic idea for taking to retreat or working with at home. And I'm going to show you how I cut down my foam board and how I made my first set of these. Now, the largest ones I did were 12-inch square, and the reason I did that was because, well, a 12-inch block is a pretty common block that we do, and I know that they're usually 12.5 prior to being put together in your quilt top, but I thought a 12-inch block was a pretty decent size to start with. You can make these any size you want. And the other reason I made them in this size is because I store all my works in progress in these totes. Typically they're more of a scrapbooking tote, but I think they're absolutely perfect for quilts because like in this one, I'm doing the To the Point brown bag mystery quilt. And I have everything I need for this quilt in here. I have my directions, I have my fabric, lots of pieces are already cut. I even have my templates in here. Well, I knew a 12-inch block would fit perfectly into these bins. So again, let's say I've got something laid out, an applique project or something, and it's already on my board ready to go, and I'm just not gonna be able to get to it for whatever reason. I can take my design board, put it into my case, and it's good to go. All right, so here's how I made my version of Lori Holt's design boards. Check it out. I started off with a 22 by 28 craft foam board. Now you can pick these up at a lot of your local craft stores. However, I actually picked this up at my local CVS. They have a little selection of crafting supplies and office supplies, and they actually had the craft foam board there at my CVS. So I picked up 2 sheets of it, and I've really tried to maximize how many boards I could get out of each sheet. So you can see me using my 12-inch quilting ruler, and I first drew 2 12-inch blocks on my foam board. And then I had enough space for 10-inch blocks at the top of each of those sections. So I now have 2 12-inch blocks and 2 10-inch blocks that I'm going to cut out of my foam board. Now I am cutting them out using a rotary cutter. However, this is not my fabric cutting rotary cutter. You know the deal, don't touch my fabric scissors. I have an extra rotary cutter that I use for miscellaneous other things. Example, cutting foam board. So I am using a non-fabric rotary cutter to cut the foam board. And you can see it cut fairly easily with the rotary cutter, and I'm just using my quilting rulers to actually cut those pieces down. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the 12-inch and the two 10-inch boards from my foam board. And this particular foam board that I got was actually double-sided. One side is white, one side is black. 6 to 1/2 dozen other, what you want to use. I did use the lighter side just so that once I put the batting on top, that it did not show through the batting. So then I had a little piece that was left, and I decided to go ahead and cut out a 7.5-inch block as well. This one would be good for any smaller blocks I'm doing, or again, any small applique pieces. I could have done an even 7, but as you know what, let's maximize the board, and we're gonna do a 7.5-inch block. Now I do need to preface this tutorial with a safety thing. We are going to be using a hot glue gun, so definitely be careful whenever using a hot glue gun. You can obviously burn yourself on both the glue and the gun. I will also preface this tutorial with I despise hot glue guns. I think I may be the only crafter alive that does not like hot glue guns. So the fact I was even using a hot glue gun to make this was pretty special. I went ahead and while my glue gun was warming up, I dived into some of my scrap bins, which I have sorted by color, to pick out some fabric that I was going to use for the binding on my design boards. So I picked up this yellow, this pretty little green with polka dots. I ended up picking an orange as well, and I actually picked the fabric because it looks like it has a spot of some kind on it, and I have no idea what it is. So since this is just for a design board, I went ahead and picked out the orange. And when we make the binding for these, you're going to make it very much like you do for a quilt. We're going to do a 2.5-inch strip. We are going to first press it in half and then fold the sides inwards to have a double binding. And then I followed Lori Holt's tutorial and ran a zigzag stitch down the middle just to hold things in place before attaching it to our design boards. And you will see all that in just a bit here. So you could use yardage to do this. I decided to go ahead and raid my stash bins. I just did a quick little check on that one to make sure I was going to have enough, and it looked like it was going to be good to go. So I have these scraps of batting, so I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that has scraps of batting sitting around somewhere. They were perfect for doing the design boards. I went ahead and laid a couple of my boards out on that piece to see how many I could get out of it, because we're always trying to not be wasteful. And then I just used that same rotary cutter I've been using to just roughly cut these out. You don't have to cut them perfectly right now. Once we attach the batting to the foam board, we will trim them down even further. So you can see it's not my sharpest rotary cutter, which is why it is my miscellaneous rotary cutter and not my fabric cutter. Okay. Now I did go in and remove the label off of that piece of foam board. Fortunately, it came off very easy. There we go. And we are first going to start by doing a bead of hot glue across one side of our foam board. Already running out of hot glue, already despising this thing. So we're going to go ahead and put it on one side and attach one side of our batting, carefully press it down. If you happen to have a hot glue gun that has a low-high setting on it, I put mine on a low setting and it worked just fine. And then we are going to go ahead and run a bead of glue down the opposite side as well. And I didn't go all the way to the edge on these because I did run a bead of glue across the bottom and top as well once I trimmed everything down. So just giving it a good press there. The only saving grace with hot glue is that it's fairly easy to clean up. I probably should not have been doing this on my cutting board, but it's okay because again, hot glue, you can just kind of rub it a little bit and it comes right up. So I'm going ahead in and I'm going to trim off all of the excess right up to the edge of the foam board. Get all the little bits off. And again, this was something I did different that I don't think Lori did in her tutorial. Is it necessary? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But as you are gonna see in tutorials coming, that I'm a wee bit of a perfectionist. So I went ahead and also attached the opposite sides just to make sure they weren't going anywhere. Silly thing would not stay standing up. I'm telling you, y'all, I am probably the only crafter out there that does not like hot glue. So much so, I gave my husband my hot glue guns, and he keeps them in his workshop. He does woodworking and stuff. I went ahead and repeated this process, and now I have the 7.5-inch board, the two 10-inch boards, as well as the two 12-inch boards. And now that our boards have the batting on them, it's now time to add the binding. So as you can see, I started with 2.5-inch strips of fabric, pressed them towards the center, and then I ran a zigzag stitch all the way down the center of the seam. And this just helps to keep the binding in place when you go to attach it to your board. Again, this is all hot glue, no sewing, other than our zigzag stitch on our binding. So I started about halfway through one side of the foam board, and I am first attaching the binding to the outside of the board. So I'm running a bead of my hot glue all the way around the outside, and that zigzag stitch kind of helps you to make sure that you get it somewhat centered on the board. And we're going to go ahead and continue that bead all the way around the board. I think I had a cramp in my finger by the time I was done this. And one last side before getting back to the beginning. And then now we are back to the start of the board. You're going to want to run a bead up to where you began. And then on this one, I went ahead and trimmed the excess and turned that piece under using glue. Honestly, on the following boards, I did not do this turning under portion. I thought it left a little too much bulk on the board. And I honestly don't feel that it's really necessary. I don't think I'm going to be using the board to the extent that I'm worried about the fabric fraying. Look at me trying to get all the hot glue off. This is why I hate hot glue. It's so messy. But I have to say it really did work in holding the fabric in place. And now I am on the front side of the board, and I am going to go ahead and tack down the binding with the hot glue. I would actually recommend you, on your first board, do the back side first to give you a little bit of practice before you do the front. Now, you'll see what I did here on the corners. I put a little bit of glue and I mitered them just like you do with binding on a quilt. It's the exact same miter. And I first put a little bit of glue on the corner and tacked it down. By the time I got to the second or third board, I didn't do that little dot and tack it down anymore. I just folded it over and went ahead, mitered the corner and glued it with the rest of the strip. So you can see here again, I did a little dot of glue and tacked it down, which you can do if you like, but I didn't really find it necessary. You can kind of tack it down with the rest of the strip. So this was the first one I did, and while it went well, I definitely feel like by the time I got to the second or third board that I really had the hang of it, and they were looking pretty neat and pretty clean. Again, I'm a bit of a neat freak, so if it wasn't perfect, you know, it will probably drive me nuts at some point. But you can see how folding the fabric under there just gave a little more bulk than I really think it needed. So on the future boards, I just cut off the excess and glued it down without turning it under. And now we're going to go ahead and do the last side. Again, just making sure we miter all those corners. Just like we do on a quilt. Wouldn't it be nice if it was that easy to miter corners on the quilt? Just throw some hot glue on it and be done with it. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody out there somewhere has done that. All right. That is one side done. Now we are going to flip it over and repeat the process on the back side of the design board. Once again, just gluing these sides down. Some tips and tricks: make sure to put that glue far enough back that when you press it down, it's not going to ooze out in the front of the binding. You can put it fairly close to the outer edge of the board. Once you press it down, once you finger press it down, it will spread a little bit, and you'll still get enough coverage. It'll still hold in place. But again, and these don't have to be perfect. Obviously, they're just using these for holding your pieces in place while transporting things around, or for designing purposes on a small scale level. So they don't have to be perfect. I'm just a wee bit of a perfectionist. So you'll have to tell me in the comments below what you think about these design boards. Have you ever made them before? Is there anything different that you use your design boards for? And I will say, if you're new to my channel and you like today's tutorial, please be sure to give me a little like and subscribe. This is the first of many tutorials to come. Again, while I am not new to quilting, I am kind of new to sharing my experiences here in the world of Facebook. I have actually been quilting for, I think I determined at some point, probably close to 27 years, on and off. I finished my first full-size quilt at the age of 13, and as would happen, you know, life got in the way for a while and quilting fell to the wayside. My passion for quilting was reignited when I got pregnant with my first child, and I decided to make a baby quilt for him. And here you have it. Here is the finished miniature design board. And that's it for today's tutorial on Lori Holt's miniature design boards. I hope you've enjoyed it. If so, please be sure to give me a like and subscribe. There'll be a lot more fun, quilty, crafty videos to come. That's it for today. Have a great day, everyone.